The studio lights burned hot as the conversation drifted from movie nostalgia into something sharper, almost imperceptibly at first. What began as playful banter about boxing montages and iconic one-liners slowly twisted into a tension no one in the room could quite name. Sylvester Stallone sat upright in his chair, shoulders squared, hands folded loosely, wearing the practiced calm of a man who had spent decades under brighter lights and harsher scrutiny. Joy Behar, perched across from him, flipped through her cue cards with a half-smile, her tone teasing, her words just pointed enough to draw laughs from the audience. She joked about his action hero persona, about masculinity, about how certain stars never evolve, and the crowd responded on cue. Stallone chuckled politely at first, nodding as if he'd heard it all before. But when Joy pivoted, slipping in a comment that blended mockery with a jab at his personal beliefs, the laughter thinned. Stallone's smile faded, replaced by a tight, thoughtful expression. He leaned forward slightly, eyes steady, and corrected her, calmly but firmly, explaining that the joke missed the mark and reduced a lifetime of work to a stereotype. Joy cut in before he finished, voice rising, brushing him off with a wave of her hand. "Oh, come on, it's television," she said, grinning toward the audience. Stallone stopped talking. For a split second, there was nothing, no laughter, no applause, just the hum of studio equipment and the faint shuffle of feet. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, measured, almost disappointed. He talked about respect, about being more than a caricature, about how humor shouldn't come at the cost of dignity. The words weren't loud, but they carried. Joy's response was immediate and sharp. She leaned back, scoffed, and interrupted him again, her tone edging from playful to dismissive. She joked about thin skin and Hollywood egos, and the audience hesitated, unsure whether to laugh. Cameras cut rapidly between the hosts, catching widened eyes, forced smiles, and producers glancing nervously from behind the scenes. Stallone's jaw tightened. He paused, then finished his thought without raising his voice, looking directly at Joy instead of the cameras. That's when Joy laughed, short, loud, and alone. It echoed awkwardly, hanging in the air without support. Stallone didn't laugh with her. He didn't respond at all. He simply looked down for a moment, then back up, nodding once as if to himself. He thanked the audience for having him, his words courteous but clipped, and settled back into his chair. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument, a void no one rushed to fill. Joy's face flushed, color rising fast. She glanced to her co-hosts, then toward the producer's table, as if waiting for someone to step in. No one did. The moment stretched, live and unfiltered. Her smile vanished. She straightened her stack of cards with trembling fingers, then pushed her chair back abruptly, the scrape audible through the microphones. "I'm done with this," she said, not joking now, her voice edged with fury and disbelief. Gasps rippled through the audience as she reached up, unclipped her microphone, and dropped it onto the desk. For a heartbeat, it felt unreal, like a rehearsed stunt gone too far, but then Joy turned and walked off, heels clicking sharply as she disappeared backstage. The camera lingered on her empty chair. Stallone sat motionless, eyes forward, expression unreadable. Around him, the remaining hosts froze in polite shock, unsure whether to speak, smile, or simply wait as the show continued without one of its loudest voices, the argument still crackling in the air. The show staggered forward in a haze after Joy disappeared backstage, as if the rhythm that had carried it for years had suddenly vanished. The remaining hosts exchanged glances that said everything and nothing at once, each silently calculating how to fill the space Joy had left behind. One attempted a transition, voice too bright, thanking Stallone again for joining them. Another offered a nervous laugh. The audience responded with scattered applause, unsure whether they were witnessing television history or an uncomfortably real breakdown. Stallone remained composed, hands folded, posture rigid. He nodded politely when spoken to, but the warmth that had accompanied his earlier anecdotes was gone. The cameras caught him taking a slow breath, his eyes briefly closing, as if grounding himself. When asked if he wanted to respond, he shook his head gently. "I think what I said stands," he replied, calm and restrained. There was no triumph in his voice, no desire to escalate. That restraint, more than anger, made the moment sting. Backstage, Joy paced in tight circles, adrenaline still coursing through her. Assistants tried to speak to her, but she waved them away, phone already in hand, scrolling through messages as notifications exploded across the screen. Clips of her walk-off were already spreading, captions screaming words like, "Meltdown," and, humiliation. She stopped abruptly, staring at her reflection in a dark monitor, jaw clenched. To her, it hadn't been about losing an argument, it was about losing control of her own table, her own voice, live on air. Producers huddled, whispering urgently. Someone suggested bringing Joy back after a commercial break. Someone else shook their head. When they finally approached her, she listened in silence, arms crossed, eyes burning. "I'm not going back out there," she said flatly. "Not today, maybe not ever." The finality in her tone left no room for negotiation. On set, the hour limped to its conclusion. The hosts wrapped the show with strained smiles, promising viewers they'd be right back tomorrow, though no one quite believed it. When the cameras finally cut, the room exhaled. Stallone stood, shook hands with those who remained, and thanked them again. One host apologized quietly. He waved it off. "It's live television," he said simply, before exiting through a side hallway to avoid the press already gathering outside. Within minutes, the network issued a brief statement calling the incident an unexpected on-air disagreement, and promising to address it internally. That did nothing to slow the firestorm. Social media split cleanly down the middle. Some accused Joy of crossing a line she'd finally tripped over. Others defended her fiercely, arguing she'd been undermined and embarrassed on her own show. Every frame of the exchange was dissected, slowed down, replayed, turned into think pieces and reaction videos. That evening, Joy broke her silence with a blunt message posted online. She wrote about respect, about feeling dismissed and humiliated in a space she'd helped define for years. She announced she was stepping away, effective immediately, unwilling to return under circumstances that made her feel silenced. The words hit like a second shockwave. Fans refreshed their screens in disbelief. Critics sharpened their takes. Supporters flooded the comments with gratitude and anger in equal measure. Stallone released a short statement of his own, far quieter, expressing regret that the conversation had derailed and emphasizing the importance of dialogue without personal attacks. He declined further interviews. His silence after that only fueled speculation, some interpreting it as grace, others as quiet victory. The next morning, the studio felt different. Joy's chair sat empty under the lights, untouched, its absence louder than any monologue. Crew members moved carefully, speaking in hushed tones. No one knew what the show would look like without her, or if it would ever feel the same. Viewers tuned in out of habit, then stayed out of curiosity, watching for cracks, for answers, for some acknowledgement of what had been lost. In the end, there was no clean resolution, no dramatic return or on-air apology. Just an argument that burned too bright to contain, spilling out of the studio and into the culture at large. One walk-off, one unfinished conversation, and a silence that settled in where Joy Behar's voice had once ruled, permanent, unresolved, and impossible to ignore.